Hello, everyone. This week we will be studying Chayei Sarah, and we're calling the teacher Chayei. The teaching Chayei Sarah, our teacher. Let's start out with some prayer. If you'll join me, please. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, everlasting King, who sets us apart by his establishments and established us on words of Torah. So the very first verse in Chayei Sarah starts out, it's on Genesis 23, verses 1 and 2. Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. So Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And I thought this was just a beautiful picture that I found online from Pinterest of Sarah. So we're going to break down a little bit. This isn't our focus, but I wanted to break this down for you because I found it very interesting. In the Hebrew, it says Sarah's lifetime, the span of Sarah's life came to 127 years. That's how it reads, or rather translated. But actually it is, and was the life of Sarah 100 year and a 20 year and a 7 years and my year of the life of Sarah. So you can see there all the words for year are highlighted in yellow. Shana, Shana, Shanaim, and then Shani. And then life, we see Chayei written twice in the sentence. So Chayei Sarah, and the lives of Sarah is repeated twice. The life of Sarah was repeated twice. So usually when we see that, it's something is repeated, and especially in this, it's one sentence and it's repeated twice. It's usually like a confirmation, but it's also that God wants to show us something. Okay. He's trying to highlight. So I believe it has to do with the spiritual life and also the physical life of Sarah. The sages also teach that this breakdown of the 100 year, the 20 year, and the 7 years, that those are teaching us that at the age of 100, she was as beautiful and as pious as when she was 20, and she was as beautiful and as pious and when she was 20 as if she were 7 years old. So, it's two ways to look at it, of why it's written like that. I believe, and I hope you'll study this more on your own, but I believe it has a lot more to do with, God's plan, 7-day plan of God, so, maybe on your own, you can study that. But like I said, the word Shana is written twice. The first 2 times it's Shana. Then the third time it's Shanaim, which would be at least 2 years. And then the Sheni, a year. Okay, it's all the same word. And then Sarah, it's important because her name means princess, and she is a picture of Israel, of the entire nation of Israel. So also it's important to note that we see the word Chayei, life, twice, and it could be looked at as a picture of resurrection. Some of the sages teach that that her life actually began with the birth of Isaac. And I can understand that as a mom, that your life changes, but there was so much more that we can learn from her entire life. And I do feel that it is really important, like I said, to see all of these these different things that we're seeing here. So the fact that there's 4 times that we're seeing years, and then again year, I find that there's a lot of fours that we find in the life of Sarah, okay? Because we not only is the word year mentioned 4 times, but we also know that she died in Kiryat Arba, okay, which is like the city or town of 4. And it's called that because of the 4 uh, couples that are buried there. And those are Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob and Leah. But also it's taught that there are 4 giants buried there. Ahiman, Sheshai, Talmai, and their father, according to Bereshit Rabbah 58:4. Also, we can see that another 4 pertaining to Sarah is she is the first of the 4 matriarchs. The matriarchs in Israel being Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. So it made me kind of go, what is this for? All these 4s. What is this? And one of the things I thought about was that the 4th number, the 4th letter, is the letter Dalet, okay, which means door. And basically, as the first matriarch, she is the door that was opened for the nation of Israel to exist. Another thing is she was buried in Machpelah, which Abraham purchased for 400. And Machpelah is known as the gateway to the Garden of Eden. So there's a lot, there, like I said, with the number 4. So the life of Sarah. Let's talk about Sarah. The life of Sarah. The first verse of the Torah portion begins with the words, the life of Sarah. But immediately we're reading about her passing. She passes away. Abraham's not there with her when she passes away. And our life, just like Sarah's life, is seen through the lens of the life that she lived and the life that she imparts to her children and family, and even to the nation, everything that she gave to the nation. So even though she dies, we are learning, and we have learned about her life and how much she poured in, to her child and to those that she was teaching. And as a mother, I recognize that I'm given such an important role in life of giving life, but it's not only are we given the opportunity of giving life physically, but we're also given the opportunity to give life spiritually, impart that spirituality, impart the word to others, and give that to other people. Last week, we learned about Abraham and how he was able to instruct. God wanted him to instruct. That was a specific word, and to pass down the light to his loved ones. And God chose him for that purpose, to pass that light down, or to pass God's way, or instruction to his descendants. Well, we have to consider that Sarah was one with her husband. So she's walking right alongside him, right on the same path. And she's basically, helping him and enhancing, his words, his deeds, but she's right there backing him up. And so she's also, giving that same law and that same instruction to those around her. So the Midrash states in Tanhuma 9, all that occurred to our patriarchs is a sign for their descendants. A sign is there for us to look at and to learn from. And in doing so, we're actually learning from our patriarchs as if they're present right now with us by what we read in the scriptures. But that doesn't just pertain to the patriarchs, it pertains to the matriarchs as well. We're constantly learning, about the matriarchs. So this week obviously is devoted to Sarah. And as far as learning, I always think about this. I always tell my kids, I don't want you to make the same mistakes I made. I'm always telling them that. It's like, I'm telling you this because I don't want you to make the same mistakes I made. I've learned this. I've learned how to do this because I made this mistake. So I knew not to do that again. I learned how to do this banking thing because I made a mistake here, so I know how to do this. So I think that the most important thing is that we learn from our mistakes, and that's how we're able to teach our kids, because we desire that our kids have a better life than we've had, and we just want to make our kids' life easier. And basically, we're trying to follow in the footsteps of those before us. So we have our mothers and our grandmothers, and even, some of the stories my mom would say were from her grandma, my great grandma. So some of the things that we do are directly from our past, our descendants, our relatives, our past relatives. So Rashi said, and this is going back to, when the angels came, the three angels came to the tents of Abraham. And what Rashi said was, and he lifted his eyes and he saw, and behold, three men, that is angels, were standing over him. One to give tidings to Sarah that she would bear a son, one to overturn Sodom, and one to heal Abraham, because he had just had his circumcision. And he saw that they were hesitating to approach him, and he ran towards them from the opening of the tent, and he bowed down to the ground. Well, I think that this is really important that Rashi, pointed this out, that of the three angels, one was specifically sent to Sarah to announce that she was going to have a son. To me, that was so merciful for God to send this angel specifically to Sarah, kind of like what happened with Mary in the New Testament, where, Gabriel comes to announce that she is going to have a child, right? And basically, God was merciful to Sarah, and the same thing had occurred with her, that, an angel came specifically to tell her. And I think this is really so compassionate of God to do this, because women are all about relationships and emotions, and men tend to be more about facts and getting things done. So God sent the angel to meet her personally, to announce a blessing that would be coming to her soon, a son. And the shock of having a child must have been overwhelming for her, but even more so because of her age. So that probably multiplied that, stress and the whole thing, even more to her. I know for me, I've told some people, I don't tell everyone, but I remember when the Lord showed me that I was going to have a son, and there was more than one confirmation that he gave me to show me. And I had been praying and praying and praying for a son, because we had the girls, but, we didn't have a boy. And it had been 9 years between, the the last daughter we had, and then our son Elon. And it was, God, it was like I was 39, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm no spring chicken, and I had no idea what it was going to be like. So it was a real blessing because of the fact that the Lord showed me prior to having a son that we were going to have a son, and it was a real comfort. So I feel, just by my own experience, I feel that God did that same thing for Sarah, that he was so merciful to show her, to give her a peace of mind, like it's going to be okay. That's why I'm showing you, you're going to have a son. It's going to be okay. So God said to Abraham in Genesis 17, verses 15 and 16, God said to Abraham, as for your wife Sarai, you shall not call her Sarai, but her name will be called Sarah. And I will bless her. Indeed, I will give her a son. I will give you a son by her, and I will bless her so that she shall give rise to nations. Rulers of people shall issue from her. And Rabbeinu Bachya, Bereshit 11:30. This is why both Avram and Sarai decided to leave their home and to move to the land of Canaan, hoping that due to this additional merit of the Holy Land, they would be able to have children. And I believe I've spoken about this before. Some of the writings say that if you can't have children in one place, move, and maybe, you'll have a child there, because God might not want to be blessing you where you're at. You might need to move so that God can bless you. And I thought that was really interesting that the sages would speak about that. But I love to see how they speak on every single issue that maybe isn't brought up at a regular meeting with other people. So I also feel it's important to look at the fact that she's there by her husband's side during the good times and the bad. And by that, I mean that the times when, they hadn't been able to have a child. And yet, they're there, they're together. She's submissive, but she's strong. And I really feel like we need to see that about her, that she's strong. She's not afraid to open her mouth. And we're going to get to see that a little bit more in a while. But she speaks to him. She trusts Abraham. And she's known for her beauty, but her beauty is not only physical, which, the scriptures speak about her beauty, but also spiritually. She's a beautiful person spiritually. She's known also as a prophetess, okay? And Genesis 21:12 is where the sages get this from. It says, in all that Sarah has said to you, hearken to her voice. And because of that verse, the sages say she was a prophetess, and she was fearless to open her mouth. Going along a little bit more with that, in the life of Sarah, Orchot Tzadikim 13, there are 4 characteristics in the matter of listening. In Yalchut Shimoni, Genesis 32. I didn't write all 4, I'm just listing 2 here. There's one who hears and loses thereby, and there's one who hears and is rewarded thereby. Like the first one could be Adam, because he listened to Hava, to Eve, he lost the ability to be in the Garden of Eden. Whereas Abraham, okay, and then let me read the next paragraph. And then there's the one who listens and is rewarded, and that would be Abraham. For our father, for it was said to him, in all that Sarah says to you, hearken unto her voice. And what was his reward? For in Isaac shall your seed be called. So, like I said, she was fearless to speak, but also her husband listened to her as a wise woman. Abraham received her words and was rewarded with the seed of Isaac. In Matthew 10:41, it says, he that receives a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And he that receives a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive what a righteous man will give him, a righteous man's reward. So that's why, I mean, we've taught this for years, that it's like, receive a prophet and you're in a prophet's name and you'll receive the reward a prophet can give you. Receive a pastor in a pastor's name and you'll receive what a pastor can give you. So that's why we've said for many years, it's so important to know, the different gifts that people have within them so that you can receive that gift that God is using through these people. Well, Abraham could have just heard her words and as like, oh, that's my wife talking, and not hear her speaking prophetically to him. But it says he hearkened to her voice. So what was instructed, but it was more important that he received her words and was rewarded with the seed of Isaac, and therefore the descendants of God's promise. In the book, The Garden of Peace by Rabbi Arush, Michael's talked about this book a lot. My husband's talked about this book a lot because it kind of changed a lot in how he thought and saw marriage and relationships. But in the book, it details the importance of men listening to their wives. And in essence, it creates a better relationship between a husband and a wife. And that's not to say that women are always right, but it does show the importance of a man hearing her heart. And it does help the relationship when there is that proper communication and a man really trying to hear what the wife is saying. An amazing book. So as far as hospitality, we've spoken about Abraham, being very hospitable, but it was also Sarah, both of them, because it was their home. Both of them were known for their hospitality. They opened their homes and they fed the three angels that came to visit. And it stated that their home was open and inviting. One thing I love about this, and I think that it's so important, is that Abraham had just been circumcised, and yet he gets up and he runs to them like, how can I help you? What do you need? When the angels come. And, it's like he puts aside his needs, his frailty, so that he can help. And the beauty in that is so amazing because, he's really putting these strangers that are coming before his own needs. And whenever I read about the hospitality of Abraham and Sarah, I think about my mom and my dad so much because they were very hospitable. And my parents' home was a great example for welcoming others. And I remember when my mom passed away, one of my friends from school, I went to school with her since elementary, and we were still friends in high school. As a matter of fact, we're still friends now. But my friend contacted me and she said, golly, Eileen, I remember going over and playing, and your mom was always welcoming to me, and she'd invite me to stay for dinner. And she never would tell me to, it's time for you to go home, or if anything, she would drive me home if it got late. But she said she had no idea what was going on in my home and why I wanted to just be away from the house. And I was always so thankful for your mom being there for me. And she was very special to me. And that was so amazing to me because we don't know what everybody's going through. So it's important to be there for each other and show that hospitality and show that love and kindness to each other. And just remember, be like the tents of Abraham and Sarah. In Bereshit Rabbah 58:3, going back to the fact that Sarah lived 127 years, Rabbi Akiva was once sitting and lecturing, and the audience began to doze off. And he sought to rouse them. So he said, why was Esther seen fit to reign over 127 provinces? The explanation is this: let Esther, who was a descendant of Sarah, who lived 127 years, come and reign over 127 provinces. So in the Midrash from Bereshit Rabbah 58:3, the fact that two of the most important women that we see in the scriptures were linked with the number 127, I believe is huge, because Sarah being the first matriarch, right, and Esther being the queen, and both are a picture of Israel. And we've learned before about the number 127 when we've studied the book, when we study during Purim about Esther. And it's amazing because there are 120, a jubilee is 50 every 50 years, and there's 120 jubilees in the year 6,000. If we add them up, the 120 times a 50, it's 6,000. And then we're left with the seventh, which is the seventh day, or the day of the Lord, the Yom Shekulo Shabbat, the day that is all Sabbath. So in both of these women, we're getting a taste, just through that number, we're getting a taste of the day of the Lord. In Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer 32:8 in Sepharia, when Abraham returned from Mount Moriah in peace, now this is right after the Akedah, okay, after the binding of Isaac, and Abraham returned from Mount Moriah in peace, the anger of Samael is Hasatan, the adversary, okay, and he saw that the desire of his heart to frustrate the offering of our father Abraham had not been realized. What did he do? He went and said to Sarah, because he couldn't get what he wanted, he goes to Sarah and he says, have you not heard what has happened in the world? And she said to him, no. And he said to her, your husband Abraham has taken your son Isaac and slain him and offered him up as a burnt offering upon the altar. She began to weep and to cry aloud 3 times, corresponding to the 3 sustained notes of the shofar, and her soul fled and she died. So the Midrash Rabbah says, Sarah having died of grief over the binding of Isaac. So some believe that that is what she died from, just the heartbreak of Isaac, in the Akedah, being bound up and being killed. So not only is that important, but one of the things that we look at is the 3 sustained notes, the 3 cries that she gives out loud, that they're the notes of the shofar that are sounded at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the tekiah, the shevarim, and the teruah. The different sounds express different types of crying and bringing us to repentance during the 10 days of awe. The sounds resemble sighing or wailing or sobbing cries. And what it causes in us, or what it should cause in us, is for us to mourn for the sin in our life that has separated us and led us astray from God. And hopefully those shrill sounds lead us back and turn us back to do teshuvah and return to God. The sound can be beautiful. If you've ever heard the shofar in a synagogue, it can be beautiful, but it can also be chilling. Beautiful because it's calling us to repentance, but chilling because it strikes us so deep down, and it pierces through the layers to wake us up to return to God. So something else we see about Sarah, or something else that is notable about Sarah, is that every Shabbat, you know, the matriarchs are mentioned. Okay. On Shabbat, you bless your daughters and you pray that they would be like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, the mothers, the matriarchs, the role models for us to learn from. So the prayer is, may God place you like Sarah, Rivka, Rahel, and Leah. May God bless you and guard you. May God shine his countenance upon you and bestow grace upon you. May God lift his countenance to you and give you peace. In the movie Fiddler on the Roof, we got to see that, that they're praying for their daughters, they're blessing their daughters, and they're doing it in a song. And the woman sets the tone and the environment in a home. That's every home. It doesn't have to be a Jewish home. A woman is the one that tends to set the home. Why? Because she prepares a meal. She passes down recipes from her mother and her grandmother, great grandmother, and she's handing down traditions. And, in a Jewish home, she's obviously handing down the traditions to establish a Jewish home and the way a Jewish home is run. And she readies the home for Shabbat or for the festivals. And her role is so big. A lot of times I hear, mom was the glue to hold the family together. And what is being said is, mom is the one that kind of held us together with everything that she taught us and everything that she handed down to us. So our inheritance from Sarah in Deuteronomy 6:7, it says, you shall teach them diligently to your children. This is from the Shema. You shall teach them diligently to your children and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk in the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. In John 12:24, it says, most assuredly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain. And that's how I see Sarah. She dies. Abraham just mourns for her. But because of her death, all these nations the nation of Israel came into being. And it was through her life, Chayei Sarah, that so much pertaining to Judaism, especially among women, was established. And like I said, just as we walk in the footsteps of our patriarchs and matriarchs, our footsteps are ordained by God. Our actions and our words are setting the course for both the physical and the spiritual education that we're giving our kids. What we do affects those today as well as those in the future, which is what Sarah did. What she did then affects us even today. And it's imperative to walk accurately before God, because everything we do is teaching others where and how to walk before God. Kids pick up on everything we do, whether it's good or bad. They're picking up on it all the time. So our inheritance from Sarah is high, is life. So even though this parsha starts with the death of Sarah, we embrace the life that she passed down to each of us in Chayei Sarah. So I hope that this gave you a bit of what you can get from Sarah, and I hope that for the rest of the week you can read up more on Sarah, because there's so much that we can learn from her, and there's so much life that she passed down to each and every one of us. So we will see you next week, or sooner on Shabbat. I hope you have a good week, and shalom, shalom.